They say the night hides more than shadows. It hides the truth.
Welcome to Mr. Haunting Whispers, where real crimes, true horrors, and restless spirits speak through the silence. Listen closely, because sometimes the whispers are real.
Fear doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits for you to speak first. A question asked out loud, a name whispered into the dark, a habit repeated so often it feels harmless, and then one night something responds. Tonight's confessions aren't about monsters in the shadows. They're about the moment people realized the silence was listening, and had been listening for a very long time. 6 voices, 6 answers, and every one of them wishes they'd never spoken. This is episode 8, What Answered Back. Before I tell you what happened, I need you to do something for me. Think of the place you grew up. Not the version you tell people about, the real one. The streets you knew by instinct, the shortcuts, the landmarks that felt permanent, like they'd outlive you. Now imagine going back and realizing the place remembers you, but refuses to admit you were ever there. My name is Samuel Ikenna. I grew up in a town called Greyhaven. At least, that's what I remember calling it. I left when I was 19. University, work, life, you know how it goes. Years passed. My parents died a year apart, quietly, in the way old towns like to swallow grief without ceremony. I didn't go back for the funerals. That's something that still sits heavy on my chest. So when I finally decided to return, 7 years later, it was out of guilt more than nostalgia. Greyhaven sat 4 hours off the highway, tucked between low hills and forest that always seemed a little too dense. As I drove in, I felt that strange childhood sensation, like slipping into a memory that hadn't quite solidified yet. But something was off. The welcome sign was still there, but the town name had been scratched out. Just bare wood, weathered and blank. I parked near the old grocery store, or what should have been it. Same building, same peeling paint, different name. Inside, the cashier looked at me the way people do when they don't want to start trouble. "Can I help you?" she asked. I said my name. She frowned. "I mean, what do you need?" I asked if she remembered my parents. Her eyes flicked toward the back wall where a bulletin board hung, covered in old notices. "No," she said quickly. "We don't keep records like that." I walked the town, street by street. Everything was familiar in shape, but wrong in detail. Houses repainted, mailboxes replaced, names on doors I didn't recognize. And everywhere I went, people avoided saying names, not just mine, anyone's. Your neighbor instead of Mrs. Clark. The man who used to run the hardware store. The boy who drowned. No names. At the cemetery, the truth finally surfaced. The graves were there, rows of them, but the headstones were blank, not worn away, intentionally erased. I found the spot where my parents should have been. 2 mounds, no markers, no flowers, just dirt. A man stood nearby, tending another grave, elderly, bent, watching me too closely. "They don't like being remembered," he said. I asked who. He tapped the ground gently with his boot. "The dead." I laughed nervously. "That's not how death works." He met my eyes. "That's how it works here." That night, I stayed in my childhood home, empty, stripped of photos. Every picture frame still hung on the walls, but the images inside were gone, just yellowed outlines where faces should have been. I dreamed of voices arguing beneath the floorboards, not screaming, negotiating. In the morning, my phone gallery was missing years of photos. College, friends, family, gone. Only Greyhaven remained, blurry, incomplete. I confronted the town council, 3 people who spoke like they were reciting lines they'd forgotten the meaning of. They finally told me Greyhaven had made a choice decades ago. The dead didn't stay dead here. They lingered, watched, stepped back into their old routines when no one was looking. So the town learned a solution. Erase them. Names first, then memories, then grief, because grief kept the door open. They don't exist if no one remembers them, the councilwoman said. And what about the living? I asked. She hesitated. It depends how long you stay. That night, I heard my mother's voice, calling me from beneath the floor. I answered. That was my mistake. By morning, I couldn't remember her face, or my father's laugh, or why their absence had hurt so badly. I ran. I drove until the town disappeared behind the trees. But even now, years later, when someone asks me about my childhood, I pause, because the details feel thin, like they're being slowly rubbed away. So I want to ask you something, and answer honestly. If forgetting was the only way to survive, would you let the dead take their memories with them, or would you follow them into the silence? There's something I need to confess before I begin. I don't know if I'm supposed to still be alive. And if you're listening to this late at night, when the house is quiet, when your thoughts feel louder than usual, I want you to ask yourself something first. Have you ever felt like the ground beneath you was aware? Like it remembered every step you ever took? Because where I come from, the earth doesn't forget. It waits. My name is Elias Morgan. I was born in a place called Hollowbend, a rural settlement surrounded by farmland and red clay soil that stained everything it touched. Shoes, clothes, skin, even memories, it seemed. People didn't stay long in Hollowbend. Families moved away, crops failed without explanation, and every few years, someone simply vanished. No body, no evidence, just absence. The elders used to say the land was hungry. We laughed at that when we were kids. You laugh at things you don't understand. I left Hollowbend when I was 22, swore I'd never come back, built a life in the city. Job, apartment, noise, concrete beneath my feet, solid, dependable, dead. But then my brother Jonah disappeared. He'd gone back to Hollowbend to sell our childhood home, said the place felt unfinished. That was his word, unfinished. The last message I got from him was a voice note, static heavy, breathless. "It knows I'm here," he whispered. "I think it always has." Then nothing. So I went back. The town hadn't changed, which somehow made it worse. Same cracked roads, same sagging barns, same fields stretching out like open wounds under the sky. But the people? They watched me like they were counting. The sheriff didn't remember my brother, said no one by that name had lived there in years. When I pressed him, his jaw tightened. "Best not to stir old soil," he said. Our family home stood empty, no signs of struggle, no dust, as if someone had been living there right up until the moment they hadn't. That night, I heard footsteps outside, slow, heavy, dragging. I looked through the window and saw impressions forming in the dirt, footsteps with no body above them. They circled the house, patient, testing. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I walked the fields behind the house. The soil felt warm, not from the sun, from beneath. Every step I took, the ground compressed just a little too slowly, like it was resisting letting go of my weight. I found Jonah's boot half buried near the old oak tree, still tied. Inside, dried red clay, packed tight, like something had been pulling him downward. I went to the town records office, dusty ledgers, handwritten names, and that's when I saw it, the pattern. Every disappearance coincided with a burial, not in the cemetery, in the fields. People didn't die here, they were planted. The land didn't grow crops, it grew us. That night, I dreamed of roots wrapping around my legs, not choking, holding, anchoring, whispering my name in a voice that sounded like Jonah's. "Stay," it said. "You belong to me." I woke with dirt under my fingernails, red clay, packed deep. I confronted one of the elders, a woman so old her skin looked like dried earth. She didn't deny it. "We feed the land so it remembers us," she said. "If it forgets, it takes more." "And my brother?" I asked. Her eyes softened. He sank well. The ground started calling to me after that, not with words, with gravity. Every step felt heavier, every breath slower. I felt claimed. On my final night, the soil outside the house began to move. Not erupt, not break, just breathe. The ground rose and fell like a chest. I understood then. The land wasn't alive, it was composed of everyone who'd ever stayed too long, of everyone who'd been remembered too deeply. I ran. I made it to my car, drove until the fields gave way to asphalt. But even now, miles away, I feel it. When I stand barefoot, the ground hums. When I sleep, I dream of sinking, peacefully, like returning home. Sometimes I wake up with red clay on my sheets, and sometimes, when I stand very still, I swear the earth beneath me shifts, adjusting, recognizing my weight. So let me ask you something before this story ends. When you stand where you are right now, do you feel held, or do you feel claimed? Because some places don't want to be left behind. They just wait until you remember where you came from. Every story tonight began the same way. A voice, a thought, a question spoken aloud, and maybe that's the lesson. Not everything that answers is meant to be heard. Not every silence is empty, and not every response is a coincidence. You've just listened to Mr. Haunting Whispers TV, where stories breathe in the dark, and the quiet remembers who spoke first. If something felt closer tonight, don't worry, you invited it. Until the next whisper, keep your lights dim, your questions unasked, and your silence intact. Because some things don't haunt houses, they haunt conversations.
You've been listening to Mr. Haunting Whispers, where every truth leaves a scar. If the story unsettled you, good. That means you were listening. Subscribe and stay close to the dark, because the next whisper might be for you.